Teachers of Reddit. What is the funniest thing that has happened in your classroom to a student that, as a teacher, you were not allowed to laugh at? When reading Hamlet with the class, after Ophelia's line about Hamlet, to speak of horrors, he comes before me, a kid said, "Hamlet, get it together, man." I cracked up. The other kids didn't get it luckily. My friend was subbing in a high school class. The teacher had left some work and the kids all had these sheets they had to fill out. One kid, let's call him Jimmy, who was overweight, was bringing his filled-out sheet to the teacher's desk when another female student, think Mean Girls, asked out loud, "Jimmy, why are you so fat?" Before my friend could say something, Jimmy replied with, "You want to know why I'm so fat? Because every time I FK your mother, she gives me a cookie." My friend had to leave the room so as not to laugh. Everybody lost it and apparently the girl even apologized because Jimmy's comeback was too good. Teacher hears a girl's phone vibrating in her purse and says, "I hope that is a phone." Teacher walks another 2 steps and realizes what she just said. Class erupts in laughter. My friend's wife is a high school music teacher, and she told me a story. She went into class and was getting set up, when she sees this kid take his trombone and place it between his legs and slid the slide out going, "Look, I got a tromboner." She said it was very difficult to discipline him while not laughing her ass off. One time a kid twisted another kid's nipple as he raised his hand to answer a question. I taught daycare for 4 years. My favorite was when a 4-year-old would curse. It usually went like this: "Shit." Jack said, "Shit." Ms. Thickvich. They said shit. Who said shit? My dad says you can't say shit. My dad says shit all the time. I teach undergrad courses. I taught a student that had plagiarized a few paragraphs in one of her papers. I asked her to stay after lecture and sat her down, asking if she had plagiarized her paper. Her eyes got huge, she welled up and then she said, "I did." "I'm so sorry. I was so tired and had so much work and my roommate told me to do it and said you would never find out." Then with the most serious expression she whispered, "And, I know now she's the devil." I did not laugh even though I really wanted to. From when I was teaching preschool, "You have blue eyes like my mommy, but her tatas are huge." Thanks, kid. I was a student when this happened, but a friend accidentally said octopuses have 8 testicles instead of 8 tentacles when reading in a science class. The teacher was having a very hard time holding back laughter. My mom is a high school teacher at a primarily ethnic school, not a completely necessary fact but it helps. One day one of the bimbo blonde students decides she's going to scare the first person to enter the class. She hops into the giant recycling bin in the room, one of these, and popped out to scare one of the black students. He isn't fazed in the slightest, looks over to my mom and says, "Hey look miss, white trash." The best part was she didn't get the joke. My wife is an elementary art teacher, which basically means constant stories. My favorite is from a time when kindergarteners were playing with Play-Doh. Class was ending, and one little fella with a light speech impediment was just standing there, looking down. Wife checks to make sure Hess okay. He turns around, showing the little Play-Doh snake Hess holding to his crotch and says, "Look, it's the whiner." TL/Doctor, it's the whiner. I believe my brother has posted about this before. Our aunt teaches kindergarten, so with 5-year-olds, in an unprivileged neighborhood. Often, the kids are exposed to swearing and profanity at a young age. One time, she asked her students to sit crisscross applesauce and one kid wasn't paying attention. His friend next to him whispered, "Hey, crisscross applesauce motherfucker." Needless to say, my aunt couldn't contain her laughter and had to leave the room for a minute. I was teaching EFL to a class of primary school Thai kids. I was teaching them plurals by showing them a slideshow of cartoon monsters. It has 3 eyes, it has 4 legs, etc., and getting them to tell me how many limbs and stuff each monster had. One little kid, 5 years old, got really into it and on one monster shoots his hand in the air and comes out with it has 1 anus. I was speechless for a second, so he jumped up on his chair, backwards, bends over and starts pointing to his arse shouting, "No teacher, anus. It's anus." There was a quote in Romeo and Juliet where Lord Capulet says to his wife, "Bring me my long sword." Ho, where ho is supposed to be an exclamation, but when the student read it, they read it as if it said, "Bring me my long sword, ho," and everyone started laughing. Not my story, but my little brother's. When he was in 1st grade, he told his teacher a joke. "Bro, why did Captain Hook die?" "Teacher, I don't know." "Why, bro?" "Because he wiped with the wrong hand." Apparently she had to step out of the room for several minutes so she wouldn't be seen laughing at his joke. Student waiting late after rehearsal. Kid calls home, "Hey, can you tell mom to pick me up?" "Oh, she's in the shower." "What about dad?" "Hess in the shower too?" Turns to teacher, "It's going to be a while, Mr. M." Not me but a friend of mine. My friend Mr. B is teaching and the kids are doing a worksheet without talking. Suddenly a kid stands up and pushes his books and things off the desk and turns to the girl to the right of him and says, "Nigga, you smell like hot dog water." He don't know how he kept a straight face. I was having a conversation with my manager and my year 2 student comes out of the classroom and says very seriously, "Can I poop?" I taught English at a high school in Spain last year. We did a geography exercise where I would pronounce the English version of a country or body of water's name, and they would repeat it in unison. I came across the Aegean Sea, and I had no idea how to pronounce it. In my flustered confusion I tried, and said Aegean Sea, I think, and without hesitation everyone repeated Aegean Sea I think. I lost it, and to this day I'm pretty sure they still don't know why. I was on break between periods, teaching a grade 8 class. 12 to 13-year-olds. The smallest girl in the class came up to my desk and said, "So and so hit me." I figured it was just inappropriate flirting and said hit him back. She walked over, picked up a wooden stool and let him have a 2-armed swing that connected with the back of his head. He dropped. When he got up he looked at me. I said, "Don't hit girls." I think we all learned something that day. Not a teacher but in my kids' class when they were smaller, they used to do news, where each kid would tell the class about something interesting that happened. One of the teachers told me this. One little girl said, "I couldn't sleep last night so I came back downstairs and mommy and daddy were sunbathing in front of the fire." Anytime, and during first grade recess it happens quite a bit, a kid gets hit with a ball in the face or beans. I have to forcibly suppress outrageous laughter. I mean, come on. There were fish tanks in our high school biology lab. A student pulled some brightly colored fish gravel out, dried it off, gave it to 2 of the popular girls and told them it was Pop Rocks. They tried to eat it, which obviously didn't go well, so they, of course, loudly complained to the teacher. When the teacher got involved the instigator said, "Everyone knows we're not allowed to eat in the biology lab, so it's really their own fault for breaking the rules." That bio teacher did its best not to laugh and no one was punished. I'm obviously a student, not the teacher. One of my middle school teachers was taking attendance one day and said SN instead of Simon for one of the kids in the class. I laughed for about 5 minutes. Student wrote penis instead of pennies. I'm not a teacher but I was talking to my English teacher about an assignment last year while he was marking a year 8 assignment. For the assignment the students were meant to make example propaganda from Nazi Germany and one year 8 boy had written on a picture of a concentration camp, "Join the Nazis and you get free pajamas." Safe to say she was in hysterics while telling me how she had to call his parents. Right. Took my kids out on a lesson trip. We had to get a train somewhere, and one of my students is only 8 years old. So I let them go through the ticketed barrier with me. Yeah, he wasn't quick enough and the barrier smacked him in the face. I've never wanted to laugh so hard in my life. While discussing a book wherein a girl has an affair with a dentist, a student raised his hand and said, "What do Kathy and cavities have in common?" They both get filled by dentists. When the librarian was fussing around with an audio cable that wasn't working, a girl said, "Just pull it out, lick it, and stick it back in." That's what my boyfriend does and it works most of the time. I asked my class if anyone could define the word excruciating, and when no one raised their hand, a student said, "Thanks Obama." I love my job. Quiz corrections. It says needs accent. That's not what I saw at first. http://imgur.com/ho25saw3. Not a teacher but in my English class last year, I was sitting next to one of my rather large black friends. I don't remember why but the teacher asked him what his shoe size was. My black friend says 16, and I said, louder than I meant to, "Know your shoe size." My teacher erupted into laughter and walked out of the room, while my classmates slowly started to understand. My boyfriend of the time had just broken up with me a week earlier. I was working in small groups with my first graders, and one decides to get fresh with me. "Miss, Deme 9872. Do you have any kids?" No I don't." Pause. "Because you're not married, is that why?" "Sure, Silas. That's why." Another pause. "It's because no one wants to marry you, right?" Maybe it's because I was so emotionally unstable, or I actually had run out of emotion, but it took everything in me not to laugh till my sides hurt. I was showing my 8th graders how objects fall at the same rate, regardless of mass. I dropped a medicine ball with a basketball on top of it. The way they bounce makes the basketball go soaring. Anyway, I had a sprained wrist at the time, so one of my students offered to drop the balls for me. But, when he did, the basketball hit the medicine ball at an odd angle and bounced back at him and hit him right in the nuts. I pulled one of my students out of a 5th grade classroom for a moment to help him calm down. He was upset because a student he didn't like laughed at him. So I start with something along the lines of "You can't change him but you can change how you react," and he responds with "I can change his face with my fist." I wanted to acknowledge it was the perfect comeback, but I sternly addressed the aggression instead. I had one first-grade kid kick another first-grade kid in the nuts on accident, during freeze dance when they were dancing like ninjas. Apparently a 7-year-old screaming "ow my nuts" and falling down to the ground tested the limits of my professionalism. I used to teach karate. We have these large kicking bags everywhere around the room. They're solid plastic on the bottom and soft on the part where you kick them, and about 5 feet tall. They look awesome to climb on if you're 4, but we don't allow that. So one day some kid named Jack is climbing on top of one of the bags, and my coworker yells across the room, "Jack, off." I had to leave the room from laughing. My coworker did not understand what was so funny. New teacher, so not much yet. Just recently a student fell asleep while taking a pretest, and when he woke, the paper was stuck to his face. In my classroom I have large lab tables, science class. My students are also 7th graders and some are very small. I had a student who was on a good day fidgety and distracted. One day, though, his pencil was rolling away from him off his table. He got up and dove for it, slamming his face on the table so hard it bounced the table off the floor and made a loud noise. His nose then proceeded to gush blood as he held up his prize and said woozily, "My pencil." I tried to keep it together because the thought went through my head that I wasn't sure if I should write him up for disrupting class or assaulting a student.